5-year strategic plan. And it's under the theme, Transforming the Currency Union Together. And so when we think about transformation, we think of change, we think of movement, we think of action, we think of energy. And so here we are discussing with you, youth, that we are looking at how do we get your views, your perspectives, what is your role in this socio-economic transformation? And that's what we want to really get you energized in a conversation, because at the end of the day, this future is yours. Not only is the present yours, the future is yours. And so making this future is not one that you can just stand by the wayside and just look to see what happens. It's really about how do we make sure that young people between the ages of 16 and 35 are really actively engaged in shaping that future. And so the panel, we're going to start off having us have a little discussion, and then we're going to ask you to get involved. Now, we're going to take it along 5 areas of focus. We have the ECCB Strategic Goals 2017-2021. There are 5 goals, and you have them on your program. And then we're going to look at Innovation and Economic Transformation by Dr. Ricardo Neal. Because as we talk about transformation, we recognize that if change has to come, it has to come from new ideas and new perspectives, hence innovation. And so many times when we talk to persons, particularly those in schools and colleges across the region, and we ask them, what are your goals? What you want to do? What you want to see? What do you want to be engaged in? Sometimes you hear a person say, we're bored. But we want you to understand that the future is yours, not only to grab onto, but the future is yours to design, hence innovation. And then we want to talk about policies that need to be instituted to enable young people to reach their potential. And so we have Azad Gums, and he will be speaking on from his perspective as a young person, as a young professional, and also as a lawyer, in terms of what is the policy agenda for the youth. And then we have the ECCU Growth Plan, which is being spearheaded by Daniel Atherton, advisor ECCB. And the bank is led by Danny and his OECS counterpart from the OECS Commission. They're going around the region and really engaging the populace on the growth strategy, what is required, what is needed, how do we get to where we want to go, and what sort of ecosystem is required to be able to catapult us in that direction. And then, of course, we are part of a currency union of 8 member countries, 8 participating governments of the ECCB. We start off from Anguilla, Antigua and Barbuda, Dominica, Grenada, Montserrat, and that is the Commonwealth of Dominica, and St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So it's 8 countries with 18 billion strong, okay? And if you think about that, you get a sense of the potential of the region, not as one individual territory or country, but as 8. And we want to acknowledge at this point in time our brothers and sisters in Anguilla who could not be here based on the devastation from Irma and Maria, as well as our sisters and brothers in Dominica, the Commonwealth of Dominica, who could not be here as well. And so our hearts and prayers with them at this time. And as we discuss the role of the youth in the socio-economic transformation of the currency union, we ask that we consider, those of us who can be here, how blessed we are, that we can have a place to come with AC and sit down and talk and not be bothered about where we're going to sleep tonight, how we're going to get water, how we're going to get a bath, you know, simple things, how we're going to get food, how we're going to get water to drink. I mean, you see here we have island purified water. It's in here and in other countries. we can say, listen, we are truly blessed, not because we deserved it, but because by the grace of God. So having said that, I'm going to start off by giving just a little overview, no more than 3 minutes, on the ECCB strategic goals. And then I will ask Dr. Neil to speak about innovation and economic transformation. And then we will pause here and engage you. And then we will go on to the other 3 topics. So we're going to divide this session into 2. We'll take the ECCB strategic goals 2017-2021, and then we will talk about innovation and economic transformation, and then open up the floor for discussion on how the goals align with your aspirations and where you see innovation and economic transformation. So just to give you an overview in terms of the goals, there are 5 goals. At the core, the first goal is about maintaining a strong and stable EC currency. And many of you would think, well, you have the dollar in your hand and you don't really think about it, you know, it's there. But just think about every time you want to go shopping, whether it's food or clothes or you're ordering something online. You don't think about it, but the EC currency is fixed to the US dollar at 2.7, $2.70 EC to 1 US. What does that do? It gives you certainty that when you go online on Amazon, on wherever you go online, that when something costs 10 US, you know it is 27 EC. Without even thinking, the conversion is automatic. There are other persons in other parts of this world, they don't have a fixed exchange rate. They have a floating currency. And so I tell persons, when the Jamaican dollar came into being, it was stronger than the US dollar. I think if I recognize, it was like 72 cents you required in Jamaican currency to get 1 US dollar. Now, when you think about it now, it's close, the exchange rate is now close to 200. Now, think about it, you have to eat bread at least, living just goes up. But at the end of the day, your parents' salary or your salary, those young people who are working, will provide a resilient financial sector. For those of us in this part of the world, we take it for granted that our banks will be there and that when we put our savings there, we can go back and get our savings. We take it as if it's almost as simple as waking up and breathing the air. But believe you me, at the central bank, we have had to work very hard to maintain a stable financial sector and to continue maintaining it as various challenges confront us. Take, for example, we've just had significant devastation in Anguilla and in the Commonwealth of Dominica, and Barbuda has been, for the first time in over 100 years, there's no person living on that island. And so when you think about it, but we take it for granted that the financial institutions, the financial sector will continue. But it's because of the work that the central bank, in collaboration with other partners, including the commercial banks and other regulators, that have allowed us to have that. And so how do you fit into that? What is required as we move along, as we talk about financial technology and mobile wallets and all of these digital currencies? What is required for you? Chances are the bank that you see now, 15, 20 years from now, might not be the same construct, because now most persons are in online banking and banking with their telephones, and this is going to change the landscape of the financial sector. At the same time, the central bank, as the regulator, has to make sure that things are done in accordance to a procedure to allow for a systematic way for development and to ensure the protection of persons who want to use the banking system and the wider financial sector. The third one is to be the advisor of choice to our participating governments in pursuit of fiscal and debt sustainability. And here's where we have the interrelationship between what happens in the real sector, the private sector, and what happens in the public sector. Under the fiscal stands for government management of its income and its expenditure. It's its revenues and its expenditure, and debt sustainability. And so all of these issues are really interrelated. When governments are managing their affairs prudently, then it allows for an ease and flow of what happens in the other parts of the economic sphere. And so it's important for you as agents of this economy to understand how that relate, and as citizens, and for most of you who are 18 and above, also as active participants in the democratic process through voting. And then we get to 4, and here's where we speak about active development of the, actively promote the economic development of our member territories. And there's where the central bank as a central bank not only looks at having a strong, stable currency on the monetary stability, and also having a stable and developed and diversified and resilient financial sector, but it also has to recognize between economic development, you also have to look at not just the financial sector, but the real sector. That is the productive sector, the engines of growth, entrepreneurship, and other businesses, and what is going on in the wider system. And of course, fifthly, we have our organization. As a central bank, what we do depends really on how we develop ourselves as an institution. Capacity building, training, vision, foresight, responsiveness. All of these things make us able to really fulfill our mandate, which is to make sure we actively pursue the development of the people of the region to ensure that they could be thriving and striving citizens. Having said that, therefore, and given you an anchor of our 5 pillars for our strategic plan, I will now call on Dr. Neil to talk about innovation and transformation.
Thank you very much. Should I say your hostess?
Sybil is fine.
All right, good day, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I will address the theme innovation and economic transformation, however, from an educational perspective. Innovation and economic transformation should be the driving force behind every educational institution, especially since we within the region desire to compete on a global scale. And I will try to stay within the 4-minute mark. It's difficult for a lecturer who speaks for 3 hours to speak for 4 minutes, but I'll try, okay?
Just as an initial sphere.
Yeah, if we should examine the European market, approximately 85% of the economy is stable, and it's because of innovation, which is their reality right now as I speak. According to the stats in Europe, we have approximately 67% of innovation stability in Germany. Luxembourg has 65%, Belgium has 42%, Ireland and the United Kingdom would boast 60%. And all of that is because they would have integrated within their system innovation. In addition to that, the United States of America boasts of companies such as Silicon Valley, the home of Apple, Microsoft, Uber, Amazon, Netflix, and the list goes on. These companies are directly linked to the youth who are creative and they think outside of the box. These innovations were only possible because the youth in these mainland countries are provided with the necessary resources and a strong support structure. As a member of the Technical Vocational Management Studies Division in Information Technology, it is my responsibility to review these stats and guide so as I can guide my students accordingly. We therefore consider it a necessity to involve information technology students here in St. Kitts in research and innovation. Not because we want to be known as one of the institutions in the OECS involving students in innovation, but because there is a means to this end. And the end is to secure economic transformation, not just for St. Kitts and Nevis, but for the OECS and the wider region. This then begs the question, how can innovation and transformation affect economic stability? This can be achieved by the following, by what I call my 3-tiered of innovation goals. 1, education curricular transformation. In order for the youth to engage in innovation, the present curriculum must be changed to foster investigation and research with a predetermined goal. This will enable students to be better positioned to innovate at various levels and thus revolutionize our present economy. Number 2, developing fellowships with countries with diverse or inverse interest. There has been a change in the thinking pattern, or there must be a change in the thinking pattern of our citizens as it relates to the point of education. This means that the Leeward Island must not only be a recipient of scholarships to Asian universities, but also have access to manufacturing industries, engineering facilities, and industry mentorship. Number 3, non-governmental and governmental organizations support system. The reliance on innovation to revolutionize the economy structure of a country must start with the removal of laissez-faire red tapes to ensure that research and development is a priority. This will support stability in the economy for the OECS. Therefore, the CFBC TVEM's information technology students are currently engaged in robotics research and development, drone technology, artificial intelligence, and the list goes on. These are selected projects because I believe that the stability of a nation is hinged on its ability to transform and fit into the goal of this global village. We have seen the aftermath of the climatic changes in our region, and we all know of the devastation that happened in our countries. It is therefore our responsibilities, ladies and gentlemen, to ensure that the nation youth are placed in the position to innovate so the necessary research can be done to protect us and our country. Thank you.
Innovation, and the goals that the ECCB has placed before the region, and talk about your perspective. What are you thinking when you think about these goals that speak to financial stability, strong dollar, economic development, making sure that we have policies that allow for fiscal prudence, making sure that the ECCB continues to develop as a progressive institution, and then you link that to our socio-economic transformation agenda and look at it from the perspective of innovation and socio-economic transformation and you. What are your views? So we're going to ask you to, we won't call on you unless I don't hear from you, just to give us your perspective from where you sit. What are your thoughts? What are you thinking about? I see talking going on in Antigua. Can you share your thoughts with us? Antigua and Barbuda.
Can you hear us?
Yes, go ahead, please.
So we were just discussing, well, thank you for your presentation, Doc. We were just discussing that, yes, you hit the nail on the head. The only difference with us and anyone from the rest of the world is that they have the resources, like you mentioned. And I think what my question would be is, how do we fund such innovative ideas here in our states? Because the ideas are here. What I think is missing is just, like you said, the opportunities and the resources. But how do we actually fund it?
How do we fund innovative ideas in our region? Before we ask Dr. Ricardo to respond to that, could we get some young persons to give us their views on how they think we can get innovation funded? Anyone from St. Kitts? St. Kitts, we didn't get to introduce you because you're such a big group. So when you answer, you will be able to introduce yourselves. Dr. Ricardo said I must call his students. So you are asked to go to the mic and say, how do we get innovative ideas developed and funded? And just now I'll call on youth parliamentarians. How do we get innovative ideas developed and funded? St. Kitts? Come, young people, it's your ideas we're trying to get out of you. They're coming, okay? The microphone is right there. Just say your name, the school you represent, and then let's talk about your ideas. The mic is on? Just push the button up. Yes.
Okay. Hello, good afternoon. My name is Xavier Shaw, and I represent the Clarence Fitzroy Bryant College. As for ideas we can present to raise money to fund these innovative ideas, I'm not too sure if this is directly within our reach, since we're the ones with the ideas, but as for funding, what I've seen the second years before me do was go out to get sponsorships. They're the written letters to bigger companies, for example, banks or private companies. They would have directly asked them for sponsorships to fund their research products. As for other ideas, young entrepreneurs, generally in the IT program, from what I know, they tend to do a lot of freelancing, and they would raise money themselves for their own projects. And that's all I have to say for that.
Thank you very much. Any more ideas in terms of funding? If you had an idea right now that would require $100,000 in resources, how do you get it? You have the internet, you have all of these. How do you get that done? Let me see. I'm looking at Grenada. I'm looking at Montserrat. I'm looking at St. Vincent. I'm looking at Nevis. I'm looking at Antigua and Barbuda, who posed the question, but I want some younger persons to respond. How do you get that funded? Young people are brimming with innovative ideas. We're told there's no deficit of ideas.
Sybil, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Just to piggyback off of a colleague in saying it, I think most, if not all, of the OECS countries have a citizenship by investment program that is very expensive. There's a lot of money that goes into that fund. And now we have seen St. Kitts Nevis implement a short-term hurricane relief fund. Seeing as how the Citizenship by Investment Program gets so much money, I think that one way that we can facilitate an environment of investment would be to put some money, set aside some money as it relates to citizenship by investment into an investment fund for persons or young persons who have innovative or creative ideas, so that we don't place a burden on the banks or also the persons who have to take a loan, because a lot of the people who maybe want to start a business are already in debt, whether it be by school or by other means. So maybe diversifying our CBI program to kind of facilitate monies to persons who are interested in starting their own businesses could be a way to find funds for persons interested in innovation and technology or innovative technology.
Okay. Thank you very much. We have on the table the idea of an innovation fund. And while you see part of your source as CBI, only 5 of our member states have CBI programs. St. Vincent and the Grenadines have indicated they are not at this stage interested in pursuing that angle. Anguilla and Montserrat, as British dependent territories or overseas territories, are not part of that landscape. So if we were to have an innovation fund, and I'll ask Dr. Neil to weigh in on this, but how would you fund it if you did not have, if you were to throw CBI off the table as an option for funding, how do you fund an innovation fund? If we were to have a regional innovation fund.
Johnny Kelly is here from Grenada.
Go ahead.
I just want to use a project example that was implemented in some Caribbean islands, funded by the World Bank. It's called the Caribbean Region Communication Infrastructure Project, CARCIP, and it was funded by the World Bank for the most part and supported by local government. And it provides grants for IT startups, not just startups, but IT companies, startups included, for 150,000 EC dollar grant. And to date, I can speak for Grenada, we have almost 40 startups that have received that grant so far. myself being part of a small startup that also received a grant. So that is something that the ECCB can look into, providing grants similar to the CASIP grant that is currently being offered by the World Bank. It's called CASIP project, so probably you can look up that and see the logical framework for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Neil, we're going to, any other comment before we go to Dr. Neil?
Hello.
Yes,
Hello.
we have one from St. Kitts and then we'll take from, yes, St. Kitts first. St. Kitts first, go ahead.
Is it me?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dusty Brown. I'm a young entrepreneur, 23 years of age, in the creative and entertainment industry and personal services. I just have somewhat of a flesh out because the young man mentioned presenting ideas. I think that, and we have spoken about this before, creating quite a few platforms that's going to be geared towards economic transformation and innovation, presenting those ideas maybe by students, not just students, but probably young persons like myself who can be afforded the opportunity to present themselves to investors, like banks or individuals who will be willing to, maybe you could be angel investors or some other sort of investment. And if not directly to these individuals, whoever the organization, even if it's ECCB, you can provide technical assistance with the kind of knowledge that institutions such as the Caribbean Development Bank and the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank has. They can provide that kind of assistance to help to develop the financial aspect of projects or ideas so that you can properly present the information to whoever or whatever our connections are, because I don't want to think of, or sometimes we think of these institutions as abstract from or separate from the world, but I'm pretty sure we have some connections around the world that we can tap into. Thank you.
We're going to ask Dr. Neil. We're going to ask Dr. Neil to give us your take on an innovation fund, how it can be funded, and is there a role that young people can play in terms of not just being on the recipient of that fund, but actually being the drivers of the catalytic development of that fund?
All right, thanks, Lily. I'm glad I'm here. And the reason I'm glad I'm here is because we have what is called a competency-based capstone project for information technology at CFBC. And that project started in 2014. The main reason why that project was birthed was to give the students the opportunity to actually expose what they are doing at the college to the public and private sector. And since that project started, we have garnered a lot of support from the private sector organization. Now, it means that that entire project is being funded by the private sector. So whenever we want to do any kind of event or have event at a particular location, the private sector would come and be a part of it. Now, one would ask, why would the private sector do that? Because normally, if you want something to be done, then you have to give something back. So what we did was we invited all the IT managers, and we say, okay, at the end of the day, you are going to employ them. So having you there with them at the same time, seeing them presenting what they're able to do, you have a first-hand view of what these students are capable of. And so the private sector took that as something that they like. And so between 2014 until now, they have been supporting the initiative. Now, the reason why that is actually important also, it's because we oftentimes hear the private sector complain that the students, they're not ready and they can't do this and they can't do that. So to eliminate that, we say, okay, as the private sector organizations come to the college, see what the students are doing, critique them, right? And once we get them involved in that, and once we have any program that is going to be happening at some point in time, they are willing to fund it. That is our experience here with St. Kitts. So that program is actually a successful program. Now, on the other point, regarding funding projects and having students funding the projects. That project is run by students. Dr. Neil is just there as an overseer. But if we're going to talk about projects that students are able to run for themselves and then become business and so forth, the first thing that would come to mind for most persons would be why not tap into GoFund and tap into all these different agencies. While that is true, that you can tap into various agencies, some of these agencies that offer funding, these agencies only apply to certain places in the world. So I do not believe that GoFundMe extends itself towards the Caribbean region. However, there's another version for GoFundMe within the Caribbean region. But what I found recently is that persons who came about similar projects like GoFundMe would have presented their ideas. They would have said to us at CFPC in particular that, you know, if a student have an idea, the student would have to refine the ideas to a certain point and then present it to them. But that is where the problem is. In order for the idea to be refined, it needs financing at that initial stage. So most times, projects are not talked about from the initial stage, that stage when they have to get the material. It is normally talked about from the perspective of having something to show to the private sector to say, this is what I have developed, but not from the viewpoint of how do we get at that beginning stage. And so that is where the issue is. Now, I do believe that the Caribbean, the OECS and the Caribbean, we are capable enough to have a policy that actually speaks to innovation within our region. We are fully capable of that, right? A policy that speaks to youth, especially education, where you have students who have ideas, because we have students who have ideas. We have done a lot of things at CFPC. We are actually on the point of doing the entire torso of a robotic machine, right? Because we do believe that we are capable of doing it. But the issue is there is no policy that is set to say that, you know, every month or every time a government probably change or something happens, then there's a fund that is set for innovation. Now, if that fund is there, I beg to be corrected. But as far as my knowledge goes, right, there is no fund to actually address that. And also, if that fund was there, then it should have been extended right through the region. So I'm pushing for that.
Okay. So we're talking about an innovation fund, and we're talking about, are there policies? Somebody's mic is on. We want you to join the conversation. We're talking about innovation and innovation policies. And how can we ensure that these policies are, is that a conversation, Julie? I think some, sorry? Okay, we're having a problem. Okay, so we're talking about innovation and innovation policies and how do we get the youth involved. And so what we're going to do is jump right in and get Azad at this stage to talk about policy development, what policies impact youth. And as he's talking, while he's talking, I want young people to start thinking about you within that policy. What policies do you want to be constructed for you? And how do you want them to be constructed? And even more important, how should they be implemented? So we want to continue the discussion from an innovation fund for young people, policies to support that development, and to make sure you leverage your potential. Azad.
Once again, a pleasant good afternoon to everyone here from St. Kitts and Nevis, also those from the other member states of the Eastern Caribbean. The topic at hand is one in which it involves policies for young people. I think as many of us here are young people, we often know what we want, and we often know, and we often say very often our hopes and plans. So my presentation might actually be echoing some of your sentiments that might have been expressed at a different forum, at a different, location. And so I would start off always scholarship grants I think that it is important that private sector and public sector always ensure that the young people of their country, whether it is here in St. Kitts and Nevis or the wider Caribbean, given monetary value, monetary contributions to ensure that they can pursue higher education, and not just higher education. We realize that education is a platform for many persons to escape poverty, for many persons to go on to escape, lower social ladder or status. And so it is important within the private schools, the primary schools, the secondary schools, and the tertiary institutions. I am not very much aware of the programs and plans in the various Eastern Caribbean countries, but I know in St. Kitts and Nevis we do have some already, private sector and the government, which fund individuals, but again, it is never, ever really enough. I know here in St. Kitts and Nevis we have a state scholarship, which in my time only went to one individual. I have seen since then the expansion of the scholarship to include the first runner-up and the second runner-up. And I say so because in 2008 I was the first runner-up and the scholarship was only afforded to the state scholar. So I have seen since then some expansion of that, but I also encourage persons who might not have been placed in the top 3 in our federation, in whatever various disciplines, perhaps science, perhaps law, and the like, to be given opportunities to, be funded tertiary education. And that is one thing I would employ the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank to get on board. I don't know how much resources you have and what is your plan for the years to come, but ensure that some sort of scholarship opportunity is available to young people so they can pursue higher education after leaving member states. Another thing that I like to touch is the community. And we realize that within our community, there are various young people who are doing extraordinary things. There are a number of organizations registered within our country and within countries of the Eastern Caribbean. I could name a few: the St. Kitts National Youth Parliament Association. I could name other associations, perhaps football clubs in our various states. And I'm just trying to give examples of community organizations which oftentimes lack funding. And sometimes you have extraordinary ideas, but you don't have the necessary funds to carry out those ideas. Recently, I have seen where I think persons from overseas have visited various countries, visited various organizations in St. Kitts and Nevis. And again, I'm not aware if this was done in other member states. But in St. Kitts and Nevis, visit various organizations to get a proposal from each organization, so that could be used and funding can be provided as a result. It is something I also urge the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank to, if they can, to get on board to ensure that some sort of funding is available for persons in these community service organizations, because oftentimes these individuals give nothing but their services and their time, and they don't have the resources, we don't have the resources to fund major projects that we would hope to enlift and enlighten our society. Another thing I could think of is that when we have the huge student loans, a lot of persons coming back from school are faced with huge student loans. I know in St. Kitts and Nevis we have the St. Kitts Nevis Development Bank, and I know that even while studying you have to pay interest rates, and I know that when you come back a lot of the interest is in arrears, and you still have to pay the 9% plus the arrears amount, and oftentimes you don't have that sort of breathing space because you come back often and you perhaps might not be able to land a job as soon as possible, but still I guess the bank gives you a 6-month period, but sometimes it takes us longer to get employment. And so what I would encourage, although that would have been the program of the bank, is to have other banks who are willing to refinance student loans for persons who are coming from overseas, who are coming back to their country you know, to be put in a position that young people could actually not put majority of their income coming back from school into paying loans. Again, the loans would have been a priority. It would have been used to finance that education, but some sort of safety net to ensure that yes, the monies are paid back because the banks do need the money and the banks do operate on a profit from the interest, we understand that, but to give young people an opportunity to pay back at a reasonable rate, at a reasonable time, so they too can accumulate resources. I'm told I have 1 more minute, so I'm going to make it as brief as possible. Other thing, I think that, you know, that the private and public sector could encourage young people. You know, we had the under 30 recognition for persons in the business, but I think that could be expanded in our countries. Perhaps the bank could make an initiative. And I'm focusing on the bank because we're here with representatives from the bank. And so, you know, to incorporate persons from dance, persons from the community service, you know, young people who are around St. Kitts and Nevis, around the member states who are contributing, to just highlight them, because when young people are highlighted, they tend to do more. I think too that we should have annual and biannual talks with the governor of the Eastern Caribbean's central bank, such as this, where young people are given the opportunity to give them, you know, updates on what we're experiencing, how we can better, and the bank can better help young people. Greater job opportunities as always, and I think I had one more thing and I'm looking for it now. But, oh yes, I think that the bank should incorporate some sort of program within the high schools, like an entrepreneurship program. I know in my time there was a Young Leaders program. I don't see that happening now, but I think that is a golden opportunity for young people across the region to interact, to have a competition, and to, you know, use their business savvy senses to create opportunities.
Thank you, Azar. You spoke about the issue of scholarship grants and funding for community service organization and the performing arts. You spoke about education funding and refinancing policies. You spoke about biannual engagements with the governor of the central bank, and I'm sure you would expand that to other organizations as well. And you spoke about the need for entrepreneurship programs. Within this construct, and before we get into Danny's looking at the growth strategy, I want us to spend a few minutes and let me hear from you in terms of what can you effect in terms of the policy agenda to ensure that policies are pro-youth development. What do you think as a young person can you do to really ensure that policies are enacted to support your achievement, your potential? What do you think? So I want to hear let me hear from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Let me hear from Montserrat. Let me hear from Antigua and Barbuda, Grenada, Nevis, and St. Kitts, just to get your views on how can you drive policies, and also to keep in this conversation, to keep on the table for the conversation, is innovation, policy. We spoke about financing innovation and about a possibility of an innovation fund. So all of these together, what are your views?
Hello?
Go ahead.
Hello.
Go ahead.
I'm Ashneil Jeffers from Montserrat, and I guess one of the best ways to go and do this is, for example, a youth parliament. I'm not sure how many youth parliaments they have on like the various islands and so on, but Montserrat had one for a small amount of time. Like they were talking about it for a while and they just basically disappeared. And I know recently there's a project to go and restart it again. I'm actually like helping towards developing it. The only thing is that even if, for example, Montserrat has a youth parliament, it's just how much support the government actually gives us. I know from what I've heard of the last time that even though that they had the youth parliament in Montserrat, the ministers didn't really listen to them. So in the end, it was pretty much futile, and I think that was one of the main reasons why it disbanded in the first place. And that's the trouble that, well, at least we have here in Montserrat, is that the young people doesn't have as strong of a voice. here. And yeah, it's kind of difficult. At least that's what I've experienced so far. Yeah.
Anyone has a different opinion? Is it that you wait for persons to give you a voice, or young people can get their voice out there using different means, given your innovative selves? Is it that you need to? I'm trying to sort of push the other way. If somebody doesn't give you a voice, don't you make sure they hear you? How do you get that done?
Hi, hello.
Go ahead.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Hi, Joshua and Andrew from St. Lucia. You hearing me?
Yes, we go ahead.
Just to comment on the gentleman from Montserrat, what I would advise is that the youth in the island, they come together and form a National Youth Council. Currently, I'm the president of the National Youth Council in St. Lucia, and if needs be, we can, assist those in Montserrat with the formation of such an organization. Can be very helpful to the young persons in that area. I just wanted to comment on the Innovation Fund. Here in St. Lucia, the National Youth Council is having discussions with the credit unions at the moment, so that the public can convert some of their accounts to youth development accounts. And what happens is that those accounts send over $1 or $2 to a special fund every month, and those monies are accumulated more or less to be used for youth development. And I think maybe something like this duplicated in our banking systems can actually fund an innovation fund. The other comment that I have is that in the region, I think we have to also look at land use policies. Moving forward, it's obvious that young people, it will be difficult for young persons to own land in the region. And for entrepreneurs especially, we have many young persons who are interested in going into agriculture. But without a land use policy, a lot of these lands will not be available for the young persons moving forward. And I think a land use policy, not just for entrepreneurs, but for also young persons to be able to own and afford lands moving forward, is crucial at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Other countries want to weigh in on this. We just heard about the National Youth Council. Is there any move to get a regional youth council that will give you more strength in terms of advocating for policies that affect you as a region? Given the free movement of persons across, you want to make this regional. We heard about the youth development accounts that is currently being looked at in St. Lucia in collaboration with the credit unions or development banks?
Yes, the credit unions.
The credit unions, where $1, where once you participate, $1 goes to a fund, and that pooling of one
every month.
Every month, and how we can look at duplicating something like that in the banking system. Quite a very innovative concept from that, and land use policies. So what we want to hear from you is, what are your views? We just heard, and this is where we said, take CBI off the table, and let's look at our own innovation of how we can get things done by not looking at the glass half empty, but looking at it half full, and looking through new lenses of, if I had to start over again, what would I do? Can we get some feedback from St. Kitts and Nevis? You're the biggest crowd. We need to hear from you. And then we move into entrepreneurship.
I have a comment.
Go ahead. Nevis, go ahead.
My name is Delcia Bark, and the question was asked how young people could voice their opinion. Now, many young people use social media. So if they really want to get across their point, they could post a status story, and they could say how they feel about the youths and how we are moving to empower ourselves. Also, some young people do voice their opinions, but no one answers them. They are ignored. So what would you suggest to a young person who has been ignored and what's not?
I'm going to let young people answer. I think what I could say, just to give you a 30-second, and I'll let Anybody else on the panel? Yes, go ahead. Just go by the mic. The mic is on. Go ahead. Speak and see. Can you come to this mic? And while you're coming to that mic, I'll just say, you spoke about the power of social media, and I think young people need to use that in a more systematic and a more active manner than just saying, I feel sad, I feel this or that, but speak about policies that affect you and look to see how you can use social media to strengthen your ties with people across the region and not just limit yourself to who you know, but to put out things to form networks, because that is how you get strength. Your net worth is based on your networks. So try and strengthen your networks across the region, and you will see how you become empowered and powerful.
Hey, sorry. My name is Terry Kirklees, and I must say I totally agree with you when you made the interjection about getting your voice out there. As young people, we should all, if we see that there is something that is bothering us or hindering us, and just as the member for, just as the individual from Nevis said, I actually made a note of it before she said it, we should look at using these social networking more positively. I think too often we find that on these forums they are being used towards negativity and negative growth and what's not, where we can find ways, make groups on these social media, start pages and try to advance the things, the changes that we want to see in our federations and in the regions at large. Also, we should look at promoting unity amongst our islands. I must applaud the ECCU for such a great initiative such as this, but there must be more done by other businesses, different organizations, around the Caribbean to promote our pooling of ideas, because once there is unity among us, there is more that we can do together. And we may not be here in St. Kitts as skilled in one aspect of forwarding our advancing youth policy making and other stuff such as this, but somebody else from Antigua may have a great idea. So what I'm saying, once we come together and pool these ideas, we are able to work together, and once we work together, we can make a bigger impact. And to what the individual from Nevis said, I would say to you, don't stop. No, you continue pushing your ideas. You continue trying to get your voice out there, because one day the right person will hear you. Nobody could ignore you forever. As long as you continue to work together with your colleagues in Nevis, as long as those in St. Kitts, as long as we continue to work towards what we want, we cannot be ignored forever. Make your voice loud. Thank you.
Oh, I like that. Make your voice loud? No, I like that. Just to ask a question, go ahead. How many persons, as you get to the mic, how many persons across the region link up their schools to other schools in the region? Other youth organ parliaments link up to other youth parliaments, or other youth developmental associations link up. Do we have that? Those yes, youth development associations, are you linked up? Yeah. Sorry, yes, Antigua? We do. Sorry?
We do link up with each other via WhatsApp group chats. We do communicate in the region. We have, like, for example, we have a youth parliament group chat where everybody communicate issues that are recent, that just happened, and everyone give their views on it, on the issue that happened or something that happened in their country.
So that's the youth parliaments across the region?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We also have the Caribbean Regional Youth Council.
Okay. So, Des, you had something to say?
Excuse me.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, good afternoon.
about the Caribbean Regional Youth Council and that WhatsApp group that they were talking about. For example, a new person to enter, a new country to enter, like Montserrat, for example. How would they be able to enter that WhatsApp group or the Caribbean Regional National Youth Council?
Okay, good afternoon. Well, if they're really interested, you could find out who is the president of the Youth Parliament at the Caribbean, and try to get in communication with them. Give them the number, and they will add you to the group chat.
So do you have a number you can share right now?
Not right now.
Okay. Azad wants to say something before.
Yes. In relation to the group chat that was stated by the members from Nevis and the one from the individual from Montserrat who talked about the group chat, I'll tell you how the history of the group chat come along, and so how we could expand on it. Just recently, the country of St. and Nevis would have hosted the CPE Regional Youth Parliament debates. And so we saw persons from various Caribbean territories coming here in St. Kitts in June to debate. And so from there, the persons who debated here in St. Kitts and Nevis would have had their numbers, and we would have communicated via that. It's still going on. And it can be now expanded, as that's an excellent idea. What we can do is, if you are interested, you can always contact, well, I am the admin of the group.
Give us your number.
I would rather say, send me a message on Facebook, as send me a message on Facebook. However, we have the new president of the St. Kitts National Youth Parliament Association, who's also a member of that group. And so if she wants to give her number, she can, and she could tell you more about it.
So she's standing right there.
She's standing right here.
In addition, can I add?
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Cara Lee. I am the current president of the St. Kitts National Youth Parliament Association. As I just explained about the group chat, you can get my numbers 869-662-9805. You can send me a message, and I will add you, or recommend you add you to the group chat. 9805, yes. 869-662-9805.
The name? And your name again, sorry?
Cara Lee, Kara, last name Daly. Okay. Hello? Okay. I also wanted to add...
Right, thank you.
Yeah, I also wanted to add to the comment made by the representative from Montserrat about the parliamentarians not, listening to them. I must add that, for example, the St. Kitts National Youth Parliament Association, we debated a number of things, a number of issues in our National Assembly, a number of issues such as the development of a youth policy and making it mandatory for persons to wear seatbelts when they drive. We have debated it numerous times, and it felt as though persons weren't listening, but as you know, as many of you may know, recently this year, to the end of last year, to the early of this year, the youth policy in St. Kitts and Nevis was officially launched. So even though it may feel like persons aren't listening, you need to make them listen, raise awareness, do campaigns, go out there, go on radio stations, and raise, help raise awareness for your issues, help let your voice be heard. That's it.
All right. Thank you. I wanted to ask.
Yeah, I was actually going to comment on opening up what other avenues could you use. I mean, you mentioned social media to get your voice heard. I'm a young person I'm a just do it person. And I think, I have used social media to promote my business without even trying to mobilize any kind of support on the ground from any other mentor or something. But there's stuff like creating, even though you can use social media, how do you use that social media? You mentioned creating statuses, but there's also video. You can use YouTube. You can also mobilize support within your communities by doing projects. So showing your face is very important, because currently we have an issue on social media where persons don't know or can't identify with the individuals that are behind those pages. So it's very important that you go into your communities, you speak to the people, or you just do projects. You penetrate the minds of children, you do so much as to probably set up a booth on the side of the street, get permission from your local security forces or whatever it is you need to do, and forget about who isn't listening. Because if it is that you really want people to hear you, you will do the things that's necessary for you to show up and show out. So that's something I really wanted to say as it relates to people hearing you and you doing what you have to do to make sure that happens.
Yeah, let me just piggyback on the scholarship that was mentioned. We know that Saint-Kitts in particular would receive scholarship from Taiwan, I think it's Taiwan, right? Cuba, and so forth, which is good. But I think that there should be a change in the thinking pattern. Scholarships are good, and I advocate for scholarships, and students should receive scholarships. But we are dealing with a multi-diverse group set of young people. There are those who have ideas, and they would want to be exposed to some sort of engineering manufacturer, some sort of mentor who can mentor that idea into fruition. One of the issues that we have is that we do have access. We do have access to these countries, but I'm not sure if there's a discussion from the youth parliament perspective to say, why not, in addition to have us receive scholarships, also have access to these countries' manufacturing agencies, have access to their engineers, have access to the various material that they have for them to develop products and services. So that could be something that is advocated within the youth parliament. Now, the reality is that not everyone is going to get an opportunity to go to university. And I think we should do some research to see the stats versus how many persons out of a certain group set would receive scholarships to go to university versus how many would stay because of various reasons. I don't think we have that kind of stats, so I think we need to have something like that. Because there are young people out there who are very good in thinking, and they're very good in coming up with ideas, but that avenue is not there for them. The avenue that is discussed is mainly going to university and study, but you have the other set who is very good with their mind, they can think, they come up with very good ideas, but there is the encouragement, and that avenue is not there. So I'm saying that these countries, there should be some sort of discussion where that avenue is open up so they can actually get access.
Great. So as we talk about now, how do we make sure that ideas have access to a sort of international landscape for mentorship and exposure and nurturing? We move straight into the growth strategy. We're going to ask Daniel Atherton. Not only is he an advisor at the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, he's an entrepreneur. He's an agricultural economist, but he also has a farm, a hydroponics farm. And you see, I'm trying to make sure I call all those big fancy names, right? But we let Daniel talk to you about the ECCU growth strategy and where do you fit into it. And as we introduced Daniel, I remember we saying, make your voice loud, show your face, show up and show out. So I have all these buzzwords to put hashtag to.
A very good afternoon to you. And this older youth come to share some, perspective with you. As you're aware, today, this is a continuation of a very momentous activity that we had this morning, the launching of our strategic plan here at the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. And critical to any strategy is this pillar, which we represent, the one, growth, competitiveness, and employment. Now that relates very pointedly to young people. Young people are at that point on the sigmoid curve, and a lot of you understand this terminology, where you're at a point where you're increasing at an increasing rate, and then at a certain point you'll get to increase at a decreasing rate. So growth is very familiar with you. And you're at that point right now where you're exponential in your growth pattern and your expansion of knowledge and that sort of thing. So it is important that we understand growth and what it means, because it's not always, growth is not always taking place, you know, at the same rate. And you as young persons, this is your greatest point for absorption and adsorption, where, you know, as you go by, you take it into like a sponge and you take onto you, and that help you with your core values. So growth is very critical. And what we have done here with the new ideas of the new governor is to focus on creating employment. And we believe that growth comes through being competitive. You know in your classwork that, I mean, to be able to excel, you have to understand the rules of engagement. Now, in terms of employment, the rules of engagement has a direct relation to, for example, you who as economic students know of that famous formula, the consumption plus investment plus government spending plus exports less the imports. And what that does is that it tells you where you are in the whole scheme of things. You're a consumer. If you go and learn well, you can invest. You know, your investment, you have a business and government get taxes from you. And if you're an entrepreneur, you can export. And then you import probably raw material that you put into your business. So what you find happening is that we decided that the best way to have this brought to the attention of everybody was to, on March 1st of this year, convene what was called a growth dialogue among social partners. And whom we call the social partners are the government in waiting, or the leader of the opposition party, the church, the youth, business people, trades and labor union, other civil society organizations. And so we, 120, and plus the government. And so they were convened here from all 8 countries, and 120 persons representing those diverse organizations came together. And what they did is that they dealt with a number of issues that focus on 7 frameworks. There's a framework for what we call inclusive growth. And the framework for inclusive growth has 7 parts. And the 7 parts are education and skills development, employment and labor compensation, asset building and entrepreneurship, financial intermediation of real economy investments, corruption and rents, basic services and infrastructure, and fiscal transfers. Now, when we had that discussion, we looked at that and we said that within those frameworks, we want to make sure that people understand that you need to be competitive. You're not producing for your country alone, because in order for you to get foreign investment, foreign exchange earnings, you have to make sure that the product you have is so packaged that when you're going across borders, when they look at it, it meets all of the tests. It meets all of the tests for wholesomeness, it meets the test for labeling, it meets tests for correct presentation, and so those were critical. So we decided that you have to be competitive. We felt all of the persons who were here felt that in order to be competitive, not a single dimension can answer. So money alone, scholarship alone, infrastructure alone would not solve the problem. It was an ecosystem development. And this came out very clearly when Jeffrey Sachs, who is an economist, he said he went home and had a discussion with his wife, who is a doctor. And he said, I always thought, I keep recommending to people that, you should put more money in, or you should stop inflation, or you should stop unemployment. But those are unidimensional. He said, but when I speak to my wife said when a parent comes in with a young child, you ask, where did this child, how old is the child? How many persons in the household? How long has this child been showing this increase in temperature? Who are the people living around there? Is anybody around there showing the same type of sickness? So what happened is that an ecosystem is what's important, not any single dimension. And so these are critical things. Competitiveness, you know, your youthfulness in terms of your growth, you're at a very good stage for spawning ideas, and let different ideas contend. Because what they have found in the world of work, that about 70% of global trade is facilitated by people who do business, entrepreneurs. And what has happened is every 5 years, the business change form. So you now are at a critical point where you can contribute to that. And so we're saying to you that through our discussions, we are going out there and we have identified four areas: institutions, financial market developments, infrastructure, and human resource developments as the 4 areas that we need to pay attention to. And I'll leave it for questions.
Thanks. So we're going to go into Peter before we go open up the floor. We just want to just give you just a little summary so you can keep some buzzwords. Danny spoke about no single dimension. So while we're talking about what do we need for young people to be actively involved in socioeconomic transformation, he says there's no single dimension. So it's not about just getting finance or getting policies. It's an ecosystem development approach. He spoke about let different ideas contend. And so we want you to make sure that you don't just think of one single idea, but several ideas. And he spoke about the issue of growth and absorption, of where you are at the juncture of your development. And so be a sponge to absorb ideas, and then when you absorb, squeeze yourself and let all those ideas come out into the wider sphere. We're going to ask Peter now to look at you within the ECCU and the international environment, because we are in a global economy. And so we're going to ask Peter to speak. I'm going to keep you at your 4 minutes so we can get some 6 minutes of discussion.
Yes, thank you. I'll stick to my 4 minutes. So what I'm going to be looking at is basically the landscape in terms of the globalization and the global market. So just to put a few things into context, the ECCU population is over 600,000 people. The global population is 7.5 billion people. So let's just realize how small we are in the grand scheme of things. To go in a bit of economics, the ECCU's GDP is about 4.7 billion US, where the world's GDP is 75.6 trillion US dollars. So we see how small of a player we are in the market, where we don't make the moves, we more adapt. So this comes to where we have to really be nimble on our feet and be able to adapt. We see a wave in the world right now moving to nationalism, where you have Brexit, you have the Trump presidency, where he speaks about America first. So we as a region, we can't take the nationalistic approach, because together we're 600,000 in a 7.5 billion world. So imagine if we're going by ourselves. We have some places where only 5,000, 10,000 persons live. So imagine you're 10,000 in a $7.5 billion world. You're not going to make it very far. Your voice is not going to be heard. So now is a critical time for the region to really come together. And this is the reason why the bank has been focusing on these kind of forums, where we bring everyone together so the voices could be heard, so that Antigua and St. Kitts and Anguilla and Dominica and Grenada can hear the same challenges. We're all youth, we all face the same challenges. So why do we want to recreate the wheel when another country might be a step ahead of us in terms of what they're doing? So when we talk about the global world, we have to understand that you have some issues, we have some risks that are facing the ECCU right now. We have de-risking, we have climate change, and for now we know climate change is real. We saw Hurricane Irma, we saw Hurricane Maria, and we saw what, in the space of a couple hours, what it could do to our ECCU brothers and sisters in the region. So So we're very vulnerable. So what I'm trying to paint today is we see ourselves in St. Kitts and we see that, we seem like we are very big in a small world, but really we are small in a big world. So that's the point that I really want to bring across. So what we have to do is that there's a young guy in St. Lucia who decided that, the beaches were filled with seaweed. He was going to find a business opportunity out of it. And that's what we have to do in our region. We have to be innovative. The doctor spoke earlier about innovation. That is the only way for the ECCU countries to stay competitive. We have to keep ahead of the time. We have to keep making and creating something that the world wants. So they want our beaches. So we'll get them here with our beaches, but what are we going to keep them with? We have to make sure when they come, we keep them. We have to also look at technology in the sense of financial technology, the apps, and these things. We're young people. We want an app for everything. We don't want to have to go, right now we don't want to go to the supermarket. We wish we could go on an app and order our groceries and it'd be delivered to us. That's the age that young people are moving towards. But there's something that we have to break. We have to break a cycle of, we go to university to become a worker. We have to break that cycle. We have to go to university, get the knowledge, get the education, but to be an entrepreneur. For you to be employing persons, because that's the only way we're going to create wealth in this part of the region, where we become more entrepreneur rather than looking to the government for everything. Government should be our last resort. If we can provide, the government will ask us for ideas, not we asking the government for ideas. So that's why I just want us to focus on how small we are in a global world. And we don't have to think the small is a negative. The small could be a positive. So rather than selling your products locally, you have 7.5 billion persons that you could sell a product to. So there's endless possibilities. So let's just keep into context where we are and where we can go. Thank you.
Okay, so we are small, but that does not limit how far we can go. He says, find opportunities and keep ahead. What ideas can contend in the face of climate change? He gave the idea of the person who used the seaweed out of St. Lucia to create a business and to do research and to come up with some sort of purpose for the seaweed. What ideas can contend? And he spoke about growth and competitiveness and being able to do something at a way that has an international appeal. And so the issue of breaking the cycle of looking for work as opposed to creating work. Let government be our last resort. If government recognizes that we can do things on our own, they will come to us as opposed to we chasing them. And small is a positive. So I want us to talk about those. What is your views? We have a lot on the table. The size, the competitiveness, our ability to reach our potential if we just break the cycle of seeing ourselves as victims and not victors, and not just being able to look for a job but create a job. Your global outlook in life, your perspective. Let us hear from Antigua, then we go to Nevis, then we go to St. Lucia, Grenada, then we go to St. Vincent, Montserrat, and St. Kitts, as we end on that note. So let us hear from, quickly, we're going to start from Antigua and Barbuda. What are your views given what we've just discussed?
Good day.
Good day.
Lyle Jackson here from Nola New, Antigua. Just to make mention of the goals you had presented with us, goal number 3, in terms of being an advisor, I would suggest to the ECCB panel that they should establish communication with the official youth bodies on a project-based basis and implement a centralized strategic sustainability plan and aid and advise youth member states on the way forward and assist with any roadblocks that they may, of course, encounter. That's one. In terms of goal number 4, we should take the approach of legislation, of course, using the ECCB influence, present a draft policy to the different member states to create a startup business fund on a, of course, bonded basis, whereby these businesses must provide tangible goods or services back to the community for an agreed upon time in exchange for cash injection. Businesses, of course, however, must fit the youth demographic, and of course, the policy should include things, of course, like written processes for application, persons to be fit and proper, granted of approval, ownership and control, quarterly reports, prohibition against selling during the bonded period, and of course, non-applicability based on legal residence, etc.
I'm going to ask you to put that in writing and submit it to our office, because I was trying to take notes, but shorthand is not my forte. Okay? I have a competence deficiency in that. Great. We're going to hear from Nevis. I know you have to leave real soon. We all have a deadline to leave.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Welch.
Yes.
Do you know that the JA program ended in Nevis? The Junior Achievement Company program.
I think I heard something about that.
Well, this was a program in high school that encouraged young people to take up entrepreneurship, marketing, production, even graphic designing skills, but all of a sudden after 2015, it ended. I heard from a colleague in high school, it was starting up, and then after January, I asked them when is the trade fair, and they told me that JA was no longer happening.
And so what is your response? I think I'm very familiar with JA. In fact, the central bank was instructive of bringing JA to St. Kitts Nevis as to be a catalyst for that. But I think you have to ask yourselves why persons or businesses have stopped supporting JA, and whereas with the CFBC Tech Block program, it has been successful. Your ideas have to be such that businesses can see that they can leverage those ideas to good for their benefit. And many times I've been a judge at various JA programs. I actually have a grill. I bought a mini grill. I bought which is a gas tank out of Nevis, which was part of the program. But I think the problem is many of those projects are not competitive, going back to Daniel's point of view. So I think it's important when you're being part of JA, not just to be in it for the fun of it, but it has to have a competitive. So you have to say, if I'm producing a product, will someone in Singapore, Taiwan, USA, Grenada, St. Kitts, wherever would want to kill for that product? And I'm saying kill, not for kill, but you get the idea of the passion and the intensity and how attractive your product has to be. So I think the failings of the JA is that the products, not all, but majority, did not reach the level of competitiveness. It was a nice project, a nice initiative, but that was the issue. So I think it's a need to go back and look at why, and then you can then retool. But in the interest of time, I want you to direct any questions you have related to the topic we just spoke about in terms of competitiveness, our position in the global economy. St. Lucia.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. St. Lucia. No, St. Lucia, yes, you're there.
Yes, I'm here. For us in St. Lucia, one of the things that we have done to develop our young persons, and I'm hoping that many of the other countries can get this going, is a national youth policy. I think I heard someone mention it earlier. And also, I just wanted to respond to the young man earlier who asked about the Caribbean Regional Youth Council. The council actually had elections last night. Many of the countries represented here today were represented at that election. And if you would like to make contact with the council, you can do so via Facebook. We have a Facebook page. And basically, I think that some of the ideas proposed today were very good ideas in terms of regionally and our impact, how we stand globally. It is important that I think maybe as the Eastern Caribbean, we try to involve maybe a few more countries from the Caribbean and make ourselves larger if that is an option moving forward. And I think also we need to have more forums like this, maybe not just with the bank, but with other agencies who can contribute to the discussion, and so we can have more ideas put forward to the table. Thank you.
Thank you. Grenada, and then St. Kitts, and then St. Vincent.
Excuse me.
Go ahead.
Sorry for cutting in, but I actually have to go and leave just now. I just wanted to talk about the climate change issue. I'm not sure if there's any like maybe competitions, grants, or anything like that given inside the Caribbean to try to tackle climate change. I know it's a global thing, and they have like other projects that are being worked on worldwide, but or at least I haven't heard of anything being worked on in the Caribbean of like any big significance. And maybe like tackling it with like things like grants, competitions, and so on to like get the young people and other people like involved in climate change would help, and maybe even it would end up being so significant that it would be taken internationally, where like other countries will be able to like take on our ideas as well.
So you're going to lead that, right, from where you are? You're going to lead that climate change transformation, the whole revolution in terms of sensitization? An army of one?
An army of... it's more like working together with like other Caribbean islands and even the bank and so on to like actually develop something that could be able to stimulate the minds of the people in the Caribbean to battle climate change, because I think it's going to affect us a lot harder than at first than the other countries, but simply because of things like hurricanes and so on. And like the more water in the air, the easier it is for hurricanes to form. And then other things as well, since the Caribbean is already hot in the first place.
Okay, thank you. I'm looking at the time. So I haven't heard anything from high schools in St. Kitts. So while I know Desi has a quick idea she wants to share, I want to hear from a high schooler. I've heard from CFB. I haven't heard from any high schooler. What are your views?
Bill, can you just excuse the students of Nevis, please? The bus is here and we need to go.
Thank you very much for coming. Don't forget to fill out the forms, the evaluation forms, Curtis.
Okay.
No, it's like, could you mute your mic so we don't hear the exit? Thank you. I haven't heard from a high schooler. I know it's 4 o'clock. We are about 10 past 4. I haven't heard from any high school. Let me go to, and we heard from Antigua. Let me go to Grenada and come back to St. Kitts High School, and then St. Vincent.
What is it now?
So let's hear from Grenada, then St. Vincent. Grenada.
All right, so what we were thinking about, usually in college, our TMI Community College, we have like courses with small business, right? And it's usually like a 9-week course. So we were thinking that the ECCB should like do like a 3 to 6 months course, like kind of like job training in small business or entrepreneurship, to kind of give us a more realistic approach in it. And then after a while, those that do good, those businesses that look possible, like good, they should just choose us and let we do it in.
Like small, like a small grant, a mini grant.
It's like a small grant, yeah. And we'll do a little thing. Gotta start somewhere.
We're listening to you. We're listening to you. I just want to keep putting back the challenge that your innovative ideas can get you more money than even that somebody can give you. A challenge on that. But we want to hear also from St. Vincent. As we wrap up, St. Vincent. We know we never had enough time, but the conversation has to start somewhere. St. Vincent? Not hearing anything? Yes.
Hello?
Yes, hello.
Okay. My name is, I'm representing of nursing.
You're cutting out. You're cutting out.
You hearing me?
When you see green, don't keep
just
pressing.
press it one time.
Just press it once.
Oh, so you're hearing me clearly now?
Yes, now.
Okay, so from this discussion, I'm just trying to internalize everything that I just heard, but my opinions based on what we just spoke about is that initiative ideas, I think it's very good to get the youth involved in these such things as to project ideas that would benefit the economy as the way they're going to be funded, the resources that are going to fund these ideas, because I think instead of just scholarships, you also have to look at setting up programs for people who have hands-on kind of ability. So maybe they should have example for people who are into woodworks and stuff like that. It should just not be for academics, because it's not everybody is academically inclined as strong as in the theoretical aspects, but more hands-on. So maybe they should have a school set up for people who has hands-on, and we never know what they might develop. Maybe it might be something that goes worldwide or something, you never know.
Okay.
So I think that is one idea. And for policies driving it, I know you guys mentioned scholarships. And I think we as young people need to take the scholarships and the loans and grants that we get seriously, because I think, I'm not sure about other countries, but I know for St. Vincent that maybe sometimes people are granted these things, they go away and they misuse the opportunity, and it would look back and affect other people, because then they would not want to give loans, they would not want to give out the scholarship, or have a problem doing it. So I think as a driving force to enforce these policies, that when we're granted these kind of opportunities, that we actually take it seriously. So that is one way that we can enforce these kind of policies.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
We're going to hear from Grenada.
I have a lot more to say, but
in the interest of time,
time is
because
going.
we're wrapping up.
Yes. So I just want to thank you guys for having this discussion. It was very informative. I will also let my classmates know and spread the word and see what we can move forward to in the near future.
Thank you very much. Let's get to Grenada. Grenada? We did Grenada already? Okay, so we did St. Kitts to turn now. We did everybody. So it's St. Kitts. Sorry? Montserrat, we did Montserrat already. So it's St. Kitts, Desi, and then we get the high schooler, and then we get the panel to give us 30 seconds wrap up each one.
Okay, so my final contribution, I wanted to mention financial literacy. I think that's something that we really need to focus on, especially as a young entrepreneur. I've noticed that a lot of us have a problem continuing on when it comes to receiving funds and starting our projects. We're somewhat blinded by value, and I think we really need to learn to make certain decisions so we don't stunt our growth as an individual as well as for our companies. So that also helps to improve our competitiveness if we can have that level of knowledge or some kind of knowledge that's going to help us to move forward financially. So just not at my age or college, but high schools, primary schools. We just recently visited Logos Boat and bought for my 6-year-old nephew a book that's going to teach him about money and financial literacy. So I think it's very, very important at an early age.
Great, thank you. As we wrap up, we're going to ask Dr. Neil to, we have, oh, I see a high school. Yes, the high school, yes. The college, that's the college still. Okay, yes? Go quickly in front of the mic. Yeah, run. You just spoke about being agile and nimble. Peter spoke about that, right?
My name is Shama Pemberton. I attend the Clarence Fitzroy Bryant College. Well, this came from a discussion we had in class that we in the Caribbean are not exposed to as much as you would see the students in Europe and in the US being exposed to. Our discussion was based on our upload and downloading speeds, right? And incorporating the fact that we are limited online to various things where where citizens of the US could simply just go on and get one time. We don't exactly get as much as they can. So maybe finding a way to fix that problem in the Caribbean, making ourselves more versatile, so to speak, then some students here might become even more innovative and come up with better ideas. That's it.
Thank you. Okay, and with that, we now ask for each panelist to say a 30-minute summary, 30 seconds. Here's where we now economize on their time.
There's so much things to talk about. Yes, so I am glad that we have this kind of forum, and I'm hoping that the way forward is for us to have something similar. But what I want to say to the young people is that innovation is the way to go. That's the driving force. And if we miss that step, then we're going to be in the same position where we are. And so we want to ensure that whatever ideas that you have, right, you push that idea. Never feel that your idea is too large for you. Always push that idea. So I'm going to stop there. Yes.
My take is just don't let small size scare you. Always think big, always think outside the box. Only fear yourself and what you can achieve. So that's mine.
I would use the opportunity to remind all of us of the mission statement of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, advancing the good of the people of the currency union by maintaining monetary and financial stability and promoting growth and development. It's your growth, it's your development. Now be actively involved in that and make your voice loud.
I just want to say, just expanding from what Ms. Welch said, I was actually going to say, we have a voice louder than ever right now based on social media, so ensure that your voice is always heard, regardless.
Yeah, I just want to say that, you know, probably after time, you'd realize that innovation you must be very competitive, and you should disregard being small, because Israel is small, Taiwan is small. Israel is a leader in intelligence. Taiwan has the biggest reserve in finance, in money. So Singapore is the world leader when it comes to competitiveness. So just remember that, and keep advancing the good of the people. Be competitive, and do whatever you do. Do not try to be a big fish in a small pond. Be a big fish in the ocean.
Team plays 36 out of 163 countries worldwide in the robotics championship, and second in the Caribbean. I think Guyana was my highest, so it might have been third in the Caribbean, and first in the OECS. And so you get a sense of it's possible. The challenge for young people is to get with the STEM subjects in addition to all other things, because everything revolves around technology. If you're doing medicine, if you're doing auto mechanics, if you're doing woodwork, carpentry, whatever you're doing requires you to be technologically savvy. And so we're asking you to think about that, and while we have bandwidth issues and all sorts of limitations, don't let our limitations or external limitations really deter you from your aspirations. You just have to make yourself push a little harder, knock on more doors than other persons have to do. But guess what? Look where our history came from. It's not impossible. It's within our reach. So within that, our students are here. Dr. Neil wants them to stand. The robotics class. So the next time I'm looking for a robot, next time I'm looking for a robot to do my work, I'm going to come to you all. I challenge you, however, to connect across the region to your peers and young people, be it you through your community organizations or your academic organizations. Connect and build bridges, and then use those bridges to transport you to your highest level of potential. Thank you. We have some refreshments outside. Let's keep the conversation going.